Diablo is unique among fantasy universes in that it's not based around dwarves and elves, but it's a much darker world based around angels and demons. In fact, it was created by angels and demons, and now it's being fought over by the forces of hell and angels and lightness. And we just think that, that's a really fascinating setting, and we've only scratched the surface in the previous games, and we think that there's really a lot of depth that can be mined there that hasn't been looked into previously. And to do that, we looked at, we have to start with the world, we have to start somewhere, and civilizations don't just crop up out of nowhere. They are a result of environment or political forces. So we have to start with the civilizations. Where do they come from? What are their people like? And, what are their ruling classes and that kind of thing. So as an example of that, we're going to look at Chaldeum. Now, Chaldeum is a new place, a new city for Diablo 3. It is the largest trade center in all of Sanctuary, which is the Diablo 3 universe. When you have a trade center, it's kind of an innovative place because you have a lot of philosophy, a lot of trade, a lot of different cultures getting together and talking. You just have a place where there's a lot of ideas, a lot of innovation going on, and the government basically is there to just make sure that the money keeps flowing. So when you have a place like that, and then the main city of the area, which is Karast, which you saw destroyed in Diablo 2, falls, and the government from there moves over to Chaldeum, which is what happened. It changes a place. So that's something we've explored in depth. How does that change a culture? How does that change how the day-to-day life goes in that place? All of these things we take into account when we're looking at an area. How does this affect the story? How does this affect the quests you're doing? Things of that nature. All right, now we're going to go and look at the story for the game and how that has changed. So first, what do we feel is the purpose for the story in an action game? Some people will tell you that you don't need a story for an action game or much of a story for an action game, and I would disagree with that. And I really think that the main emphasis or the main reason you need to have a good story even in an action game is it gives a lot of emphasis to the action that you're doing as a character. It really gives meaning to what you're doing. If we can, as developers, make you want to find out what's going to happen next in the story as much as you want to find out what, get your next level or get your next piece of armor, then that's just another reason to drive you forward and keep you engaged in the game for longer. Another thing we've done is to extend the use of PC voice, player voice in this game. In the previous games, players had voice, but mostly to tell you things like your inventory was full or slightly comment on the environment around them. We feel that you're playing a very specific character in this game. It's not a generic off-the-shelf fighter or a generic off-the-shelf witch doctor, because there's just way too many witch doctors out there in the gaming world. So we've given them specific personalities, and with specific personalities, we've given them also very specific voices. And with this comes a unique or a different conversation system than we've had in the past. In the past, you've gone through monologues. People have spoken at you. You haven't had conversations with them. This will make the storytelling more engaging. It'll make it more lively. It'll move faster. But it will also allow your character to feel more like he's driving the action, more of a heroic entity in the story, and less like an errand boy that tends to happen somewhat in RPGs. So let's look at the specific story that we're going to tell. Our story takes place 20 years after the events of Diablo 2, Lord of Destruction, which was the expansion to Diablo 2. And Cain is convinced that hell will invade. It has not. Everyone was convinced that hell was going to invade as soon as Tyrael destroyed the World Stone, which I will explain more in a moment if you don't know what that means. But this has not happened. Cain feels very guilty and responsible for what happened in the first two Diablo games. He was raised with a lot of the legends and the lore of the Horadrim. He feels that he should have known what was coming when he saw the signs of Diablo rising again. Of course, he could have done nothing about it. If he had, we wouldn't have had a game. But, it's what drives him. So he's been spending this time researching how is he going to help defeat hell when they come back and try to invade. And a lot of people who lived through the events are no longer alive. I mean, this is a world of like the Middle Ages. If you live to 40 years old, you're very lucky. Obviously, Cain has been very, very lucky. But the people who did live through it are generally heroes, like the people you played in Diablo 2 or the first Diablo game, or normal people. And normal people, or your run-of-the-mill individual, just really didn't know how to cope with an experience like coming face-to-face with this kind of serious evil. So a lot of those people went crazy. If they're still survived, who knows where they are. So the general population either didn't see any of this or have tried to put it behind them, and it has become seen as myth or exaggeration. No one really believes that this really happened, and this is, making Cain's job even that much more difficult. So a big question that people have been asking a lot about is what has happened to Tyrael? For those of you not familiar with the lore, Tyrael is an angel who has been helping mankind through the previous games against the wishes of the rest of heaven. Excuse me. Now, at the end of Diablo 2, Lord of Destruction, he was forced to destroy an important artifact known as the World Stone. And that was the last time any of us saw him. What has he been doing all this time? No one has talked to him. No one has heard from him. Cain, last time he saw him was when Tyrael went into the cave to destroy the World Stone. So, what has he been punished? He stood right in front of this very powerful artifact when it exploded. Sure, he's an angel, but did that change him in any way? What happened to him as a result of this? So no one knows. It's been 20 years. No one's heard anything from him. Why hasn't Hell invaded is a very important question. Everyone expected Hell to invade as soon as the World Stone was destroyed, but no one has heard anything from Hell, which again has helped to convince people that this whole thing was kind of blown out of proportion or exaggerated. So these are questions that we're going to look into further, and I'm sure you guys want to know a lot more about them, and basically we're not going to talk about any of that right now.
Thanks, Leonard.